It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson on this Monday with Gareth Roberts, Ian Salmon and Emilia Bona to go through the Liverpool doings of the day, whilst everybody will have been hugely concerned around Christian Eriksen. And people can make their own minds up around the England football team, the Welsh football team, and this afternoon the Scottish football team. That's down to them. But this Anfield Wrap will be, broadly speaking, a Euros free zone for you today. There is Euros stuff on the Anfield Wrap. It's just not coming today. Instead, we have Ian, Emilia and Gareth. We will also have John talking to Neil from the Mumbai Supporters Club in the middle of this show. But we are going to look at the Liverpool squad. We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about who's staying and who's going. But we're going to start with transfers. And there's one big link, Gareth, and it is Florian Neuhaus. It does appear that it is legitimate. It feels like something that is rumbling along. It will rumble until Germany are no longer in the Euros. I've broken the no Euros rule already. There will be a bit of time on this one for Liverpool. But to me, this has all the markings, the feelings of a legit Liverpool transfer link.
Yeah, I mean, it's been reported by the people that you should listen to at this time of year. Obviously, there are absolute mad links from mad journalists and mad websites, even more than there are.
Harsh on Miguel Delaney and the Independent.
But the likes of Andy Hunter and the local crew who defo do get messages here and there to the club and back from the club. They've said they've used the words. I do love the words that are used at this time of year. Liverpool are monitoring him.
Just monitoring him?
Just monitoring him. So just constantly
like a crying baby.
Just listening to everything he does, watching everything he does, seeing what he gets up to in his spare time.
That film Eye in the Sky, they've got satellites on him at all times.
Not sure
this is
about
what the second vaccine does, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Like, only gets 5 hours kip, jib him. But yeah, I've also done the thing that you do at this time of year, which is you go and watch a YouTube video with incredibly bad music in the background.
Yeah.
But there's actually a good one on there, which someone's taking a bit of time to do, to be fair to them. And it's 12 minutes, and it's why Liverpool want to buy him. So I thought, okay, I'll watch this fella. And it's really good, and now I've ended up really excited. Definitely.
Do you want to buy him?
Definitely think we should buy him. Love what I was seeing. Love the Xabi Alonso passing and the Xabi Alonso goals. He's literally scored from like sort of halfway line over the keeper's head. Loads of genie in there as well. I can see a little bit, in that he can get the ball in tight spaces. He can turn. He doesn't seem to give the ball away a lot, but it is a YouTube compilation of his best bits. So I'm not going to see that bit, am I? But I did do the... where it can compare him to other players, like who's he like, and I think in the top 6, one of them was Curtis Jones, and I thought, oh yeah, Curtis, and like, I don't know, there's a thing in me where I'm like, I don't want Curtis's pathway blocked, but then he's 20, and this lad's a little bit older, a little bit more experience, has played international football for Germany, and obviously, as you say, we'll all monitor him in the Euros. So yeah, I can see it. And he seems to be available for about 35-ish, is the general talk, which in modern day football world is not that much, really, let's be honest. So, and he's also being compared to loads of good players. So he's the new Lothar Matthäus, he's the new Zinedine Zidane.
They were two quite different players as well. So if he's bridging that divide, what a footballer you've compared him to Alonso and Wijnaldum.
Honest, but he does, like, I think you can watch some of these compilations, can't you, and just be like, and what? But this fella looks like, I can see him fitting into Liverpool from what I'm seeing from those videos.
Can I ask 2 questions, as you seem to know more of it than me? Are we seeing him as a replacement for Gini? And also, is anyone else as interested in him as we are?
Yeah, Bayern are allegedly interested, which is a bit of a problem. Right. And then there's also talk of City, of course.
Yeah, always.
Because any single player that you ever want to buy, Man City are immediately interested in.
Were United kind of tipped as being interested in him, or is that just, like, as you say, mad journalists, mad shouts?
They're gonna sell the club to buy Sancho, aren't they? So
okay, right. So probably haven't got any spare cash for...
Yeah.
Monitoring, then. I think one of the problems that you have when you're monitoring Ian is other people can monitor your monitoring.
I think City have done that this morning.
City may well have monitored our monitoring and gone, aye. Check the big book of footballers and gone, he looks all right.
Liverpool monitoring him, we might as well monitor him. Now, he does. I've done a lot of research on this. I basically watched the video that Robbo watched as soon as Robbo told me the video existed. I was saying,
what did you think of the video? that Robbo
It
watched.
looks smart, but I was already sold. We've got to the point where you've finally broken me, and I've started looking at stats bomb pictures because I never used to understand them. I was kind of like, I don't get this. I'm too old for this.
And they're not that hard, are they?
They're not that hard.
There we go.
This made me look like, well, he's the same shape as Genie Wijnaldum. But bigger, this has got to be a good thing. And he is basically, his stats bomb thing is the same shape as Genie, but bigger, and we need a new Genie. So his new Genie, who's younger, possibly does the job even better, and is as available as him. Yes, please. Basically.
I think on all of that, Ian, where you've ended up there, it does sort of bring us into what we were going to talk about today, which was the wider squad question. We'll sort of park that for a second. I feel like Liverpool do things a year ahead, a little bit, or want to, or may have had the hand for. So I always felt Liverpool might have had a Thiago, Wijnaldum plan, both out of contract at the same time. I sort of wonder, people are discussing Genie, but as Gareth says, there's Xabi Alonso and the idea he can maybe play a little bit deeper, good range of passing, but also can do stuff further forward, the 6 and the 8 thing. I sort of wonder, with Curtis in there as well, if this fella, we're all going to talk about him like he's replacing Genie, he might actually be the lad who's meant to replace Henderson.
Quite possibly, yeah. I think at the moment, I genuinely don't care who he replaces. I don't think he needs to be a direct replacement for anyone.
Exactly.
He needs to be a body in midfield that gives us an option. And as Gareth was saying, the idea that he might be similar to Curtis, sound. I'll have 2 Curtis Jones, that'll do me fine. Because then you can play one for half the season, the other one for half the season, and it works. And we saw last season, and this will go on into the squad idea. But the idea that, this idea that we started last season with 9 midfielders, and that's enough to get you through a season, isn't it? Is it buggery?
They drop like flies, Ian, don't they?
We ended up with 3 that we could play, and 2 of them were in the wrong position. And it was... 9 clearly isn't enough. That is what we need again. The idea that we could let Genie go and not have another body come in and not have a succession plan is ridiculous. But I agree with you. There is a very high possibility the idea was Genie's replacement is Thiago. But we do need a replacement for that plan now.
I hear that argument and I go, well, Genie played in 51 matches last season and Thiago was here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I just kind of think that...
But we were missing Henderson and we were missing Fabinho.
Exactly, and what's to say these things don't happen again? Like, I think we constantly look at City, don't we, and go, okay, we can't really sort of do it the way they do things. And then we go, oh, their strength in depth's incredible and blah, blah, blah. There's a lad here who is in the Bundesliga, which is obviously a decent league. He's in the German national team, obviously a decent side. Looks to fit what Liverpool are about. I think if you can get him.
On the idea of, one of the things when you do the squad thing and you do the City thing, there was a point last season when everyone was understandably absolutely salivating at City's bench, Gareth. But at that point, I remember looking at it and they only had Nathan Ake out injured. Everybody else was fit and available, and it's why I would argue and continue to argue, despite everything else that goes on to happen, Guardiola deserves Manager of the Year, because the fact that he managed his squad through a really difficult season, and he managed them, I think, in quite an interesting way. He didn't fall into the same pitfalls as other people. But my point was, that bench at that moment, it literally could only have been Nathan Ake stronger in terms of what they already had. When you say Liverpool can't necessarily do what City can do, I think we probably can't quite go to the extreme that they go to, but we have to be pretty close to them because we want to get more points than them. We can't just write it off and go, oh, well, they can do that and we can't. We've got to have a plan.
And I think as well, if let's pray that like everyone's mostly fit next season. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? And then if they are, then like there's places and ways to give everyone a bit of match time. I mean, it's not ideal, and obviously we're going to come on to talk about this. But it's not ideal that Robertson's playing in 50 games, that Salah's playing 51, that Wijnaldum's playing 51. The idea of rotation, which we've seen City do, we should be doing that as well. And also, we sort of, I don't think we particularly did it last season, but in the past there's been times where we've sacrificed the cup competition and things like that. And there's the really boring debate every season about how important is it, should we go for it, blah, blah, blah. If you've got a bigger squad, more quality and more depth, and everyone's actually fit, you can just go stronger in the cups to give those lads some games.
And if you get City's draws,
and then you might win the thing, yeah.
On then, Emilia starting to go through the squad. We've discussed Neuhaus there and how he can fit. Liverpool, we need to be grown up, don't we, we need to acknowledge that there are legitimate injury concerns around Henderson. There are slight ongoing injury concerns about Fabinho. Is that all fair? And then there's Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita in amongst that.
When you say fair, sorry, do you mean in terms of needing more squad depth, or?
I mean, in terms of is it fair just to simply say that we've got to acknowledge Henderson's injury record is a bit questionable?
Yeah, well, you need to. I think being worried is legit. If any of us had been even a fraction worried about what happened last season just gone, then we might have been in a better position in terms of no one thought that it could get as bad as it did in terms of the number of injuries that start stacking up, the people that need to move into different positions, and then the fact that you don't just end up with problems in the area where you've got the injuries, you end up with problems in the areas where the people have had to move from to cover those injuries. So I think being incredibly worried about the worst case scenario is very reasonable, and I think worrying about Henderson and injuries isn't even worrying about the worst case scenario. It's quite a reasonable worry to be thinking about. So yes, it's something you need to be prepared around.
It is a reasonable worry, and I think it's actually, if anything, it's ever so slightly underplayed, the idea that Jordan, there will be periods in his career where he has gritted his teeth and got on with the job. I think it's very possible that happens in 1920 when Fabinho's out injured. There's not necessarily numbers. I suspect there's some of those games that the management staff might not have actually had him on the pitch for, but Liverpool keep winning. Henderson keeps performing. You can't guarantee the grit the teeth and get back on the pitch. I mean, for Christ's sake, he tried to get back on the pitch after the injury against Everton, which was berserk, frankly. We have to say that that's a problem. And then within there as well, I mentioned there Fabinho, injured this season for a period of time.
Yeah.
Injured last season for 3 months.
For a period of time.
For a period of time. Season before his first season, he's bled in a little bit, but I think there's a couple of knocks early on as well. And the nature of the position he plays, you can't sit here and expect to get 38 starts from him in the league.
No, definitely not. I mean, this is something I think we talked about on Gutter a few weeks back. We've got to look at Henderson and be realistic. And without wanting to add to the Euros content, I would love to see Jordan Henderson spend his time at the Euros as a senior player who's advising the younger players and doesn't get anywhere near the pitch. I ideally love that. And I know obviously Henderson would love to play and it'll be a measure of pride for him. But I would love to see him not be risked at all, because I'd like him as fit as possible next season. But he's a lad who's had injuries. He's into his 30s. It's not going to get any easier for him. You're not suddenly going to get a clean bill of health from this injury onwards. There will be niggles. Fabinho, when he's had a niggle, it has been a 3-month niggle, and we do lose him for substantial periods of time. This is why when we were talking the other week about Basuma, which now seems to have gone very, very quiet and been completely denied, I was very up for the idea of anybody who could do Fabinho's job when Fabinho's not there, because other than Henderson, we don't have that. We've got nobody clearly coming through who is a clear, obvious number 6 to hold. It's such a specific role, the way that we're playing it at the moment. So going out and buying a Calvin Phillips might be nice, but you don't see that as possibly being a realistic thing at the moment, because his value is going to rise ridiculously this week. We've got to accept that these two players are absolutely essential to us, but are going to have times when they're not going to be on the pitch, and we need people to compensate for that. And the people that compensate for that aren't going to be the other names in the squad at the moment that we're going to get onto in a minute.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No.
I was reading something the other day about Joel Matip's kind of like return to play, and the kind of the program or the plan that they've got around that. And it said part of the training they're doing with him and part of the rehab is to try and not only get him back to playing, but to make sure that niggles don't kind of creep back in when he's back.
More resilience.
Yeah, and as much as obviously like they're miracle workers and can do that, you can't kind of protect against that happening. And I think that's as much the case for players that are returning as it is, if you say, as players that are in the squad, but that there's a very good chance that those injuries might start to creep in as they're getting older and as their careers gone with us.
That plan for Joel was basically the plan they had for Naby this season.
Yeah.
That's why we didn't see him at the beginning, because we're conditioning him to not have injuries again.
Yeah.
Well, that went well, didn't it? Yeah.
I think in amongst that, Naby's been mentioned there by Ian, Gareth, and Oxlade-Chamberlain is a thing as well. It's worth pointing out, Oxlade-Chamberlain especially has been in a lot of squads this season. He's made a lot of 18s. He's not got that much playing time, but he's made a lot of 18s. And this sort of throws open what does injury prone mean. And it's worth also saying that, Oxlade-Chamberlain's off the back still of that very, very elongated injury. Now, we're going to come on and talk about that with the defenders, but I feel as though there are still more questions than answers around what you can actually expect from both Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita next season. The one thing that appears to be the case to me is the manager's planning he's going to have both of them at his disposal.
Yeah, it looks that way, because I think, it's easy, and I've done it myself already on other shows, to just say, I've had enough of them, they're not available enough, get rid. But, on Naby, we know that there's talent there, and we know that he's able to dictate a match, win a match. He's got loads of stuff in his locker that you'd love to see a bit more of. He's only 25. It's not like he's shot and it's the end of his career. But equally, if you did decide to cash in on him, I think everyone's paying nowhere near what you paid out for him. So it probably makes sense. It'll go against what a lot of people want, but it'll probably make sense to just keep him and see where we go. Oxlade-Chamberlain, you're right that, he was knocking about, but you just wondered what it was that he didn't turn to him. Like, he didn't really turn to him even off the bench. And it was like, well, what is that? Is it just a lack of match fitness, match sharpness? What? And then he scores that lovely goal as well, at the end of the season there, and it was like a little reminder that of what he can do. And he's 26, so he's another one that he's not shot. He had a new contract not so long back as well. And again, if we're being clever in the transfer market, which we broadly are, then it doesn't really make any sense to cash in on him either, because his stock is not particularly high at the moment, you wouldn't think. So again, the manager absolutely will rely on the pair of them. We'll say rely. The manager will pick them if they are available. He will give them a chance. Mentioned before about the reports around Neuhaus. They all had a line in as well, which was that interesting, because it obviously must come from the club to be there. Of he wants to give Curtis more time. He wants to give Curtis more playing time, which I'm fine with. But I do worry that. I just worry because of his age, and I know he'd be like, "It's all right, mate."
He'd really reassure you.
Yeah, you'd be like, "Listen, I can play every single game, and I'll be the match winner in every single game. Don't you worry about that, Gareth." But he's 20 years old, and I think when you're 20 years old, you can be absolutely brilliant, but also, if you're hit a bit of bad form or whatever, things like that, then all of a sudden, you might have a little bit of a problem if you're leaning on him too much. So it would be handy if those two fellas that we mentioned that are in the question, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita, can contribute, because they can be brilliant. They can be right up there among the best in the league. But yeah, we'll have to see it, won't we? I think there's loads of players that we'll probably go on to discuss in this show where there's loads of lines kicking about he will see how they are in pre-season. He wants to give them a chance in pre-season. And I think we've all got to sort of do the same, really.
Do you know what I was surprised by when you're saying about kind of Curtis and there being some concerns just with his age in terms of like stepping up to succeed Gini? That I read a thing that said that Gini's ability to keep the ball was 5th in the Premier League and 6th was Curtis's, which I would never ever have guessed, because I kind of see there being a bigger gulf between them than there actually probably is in reality. And it's just because you're spending so much time going, tell you what, Gini's boss, that you're actually, obviously we all appreciate how good Curtis Jones is, but you don't appreciate quite how good he is, or that he is ready to step into it. And I think with Naby and with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I think with Naby Keita, my worry is always that he will always be the player where you think he could be this. And with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he'll always be the player where you think, well, he was this. And neither of them will ever quite be what we want them to be ever. But as you say, a lot of that then comes down to what can you actually get from them if you sell them, and is it better to just keep them and see what happens?
To come back to you on the Curtis point there, Emilia, I think there's something interesting in our heads. He's still the lad who scores the 25-yarder against Everton, and he's still the left-sided forward. Whereas Liverpool do use him in much more of a deeper role, and I think it's difficult to sort of escape that Liverpool. It felt like to me we're trying to change the sort of player he was over the course of last season.
I almost think as well with the Everton goal, there's a part of, at least for me anyway, that makes you think it's like some fluky madness where you go, oh, look at that, he's dead young and he's just managed to do that, and that's, isn't that a crazy one-off? But it comes from a place of him being actually brilliant and there being a lot of skill there and him genuinely having the potential to replace Gini. But in my head, he's still just kind of the young lad that you put on against XYZ team to kind of give you moments of madness. But he is a genuinely very reliable player with a ceiling that is much higher than what he's currently achieving, but he could step into that role.
Reliability, Ian, is where the crux of this sort of midfield conversation comes from. Yeah. So there's a level of reliability in the performance of Henderson, of Fabinho, of Thiago, and it's worth pointing out Thiago has just done 5 months of being consistently available for selection,
and for the last month and a half, consistently brilliant.
So there's big questions around Henderson's reliability on the fitness front, medium-sized questions around Fabinho's. Then you've got a question around reliability in performance, if we're honest, around Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain, and to an extent, again, around their reliability. There's now questions around the reliability for Milner, if we're honest. Time comes to everybody, and he has a couple of injuries over the course of the season, last season as well.
Yeah.
Curtis, there's only his age, I would argue. Everything else suggests he's a pretty reliable player. This is what the manager is into going into next season, and it just still feels like there's just one or two too many question marks. And even if there was a signing of Neuhaus, you've then got the question mark there, which is a new player.
Yeah, there's a worrying amount of flux there, basically. There's a lot of possibilities. It's one of those where, as we said so many times last season, if you look at our squad on paper, and I know I did this in my 45-minute rant the other week.
It was only 20.
Was it only 20? It felt a hell of a longer from where I was. God knows what the listeners felt.
They loved it, lads.
Masochism on a massive scale. But on paper, our squad is 25 players deep and 25 quality players deep, and it looks great. But all the what-ifs around them that came through the season and all the what-ifs that are already there. And the biggest what-ifs are, obviously, well, one, Curtis, that looked a very definite moderating of his game, that they were going to turn him into a much more rounded player than he'd been before. So he wasn't going to be the explosive player. He would still have that explosiveness if needed, but they were going to turn him into a player who could control the game. So that looks like that's obviously been a deliberate game plan. That might be that he is the genie replacement, but you can't see him getting 51 games out. So a 20-year-old, it seems the kind of thing that could break the lad in a sort of Michael Owen's hamstrings in a later career sort of way. The biggest ones for me are going to be obviously Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. And Keita, I'm of the opinion that if someone offers you 35 million, take it, because you'll be able to spend 35 million on a lad who will be on the pitch. Keita appears to be a very good player. He's appeared to be a very good player for 4 years now. And we've not seen that for more than 3 games at a stretch at any point. I don't think it's something that you can carry, because at the moment he's a passenger, and that's mostly displayed by the Madrid performance, which is the most anonymous performance I've seen Liverpool share in a long time.
Where's the line? So you say, someone says 35 million, you take it, so I'll just do it. 18, 19,
18,
20,
19, no,
21, stop me, 22,
I'll stop
23,
I'll stop you 30.
20, so you stop me at 30.
I'll stop you at 30.
So someone comes in at 28, you'd say no?
I'd say no, because you can push them up beyond the 30 mark, because he cost us 56 million. If somebody's willing to come in for him, there is still a player there that could actually do it in another league. It's like if you go on Twitter, you'll have seen a lot of people this summer going, sell Matip. It's like, well, no, you can't sell Matip, because there's literally nobody on earth buying him. There are clubs who will take a chance if he's on a free, but there are no clubs who are coming in with money for Joel Matip with his injury record. With Keita, a league, maybe going back to Germany might be something that could spark his game again, but a league that's not as intensive as the Premier League might be the answer for him. So maybe clubs will go above 30 for him.
I do think you can get 30 comfortably.
Do you think you can get 30?
For Keita?
Yeah.
Now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think if you, like, who looks at him and his recent record and says, okay, yeah, he's the answer for us. Like, I know I'm contradicting myself a little bit here by saying 30 is not that much. I said that before, didn't I? 30 is not that much in current football world, but it still is for a lot of clubs. And if we're saying it's a step down,
there's a lot of clubs who'd be the biggest sign of the summer for at 30. Yeah. This summer especially.
Yeah. So for them, that's a massive gamble, isn't it? To say, like, no doubt, their fans would watch the Leipzig videos as well and get excited like we did, but they would probably also say, well, hang on, what's happened at Liverpool? Because, he's, what did he play last season? 16 appearances for Liverpool last season. Like, I just don't think...
How many of them do you remember?
But also...
The Madrid one, to be honest.
Yeah, but this is also why I'm saying, like, if you're the buying club, what are you seeing after 16 appearances to say, okay, go and give 30 million?
He doesn't affect anything in any great way last season at all.
And
apart from Madrid.
We only started 9 of them as well.
I don't want to be the person that's throwing Naby Keita under the bus on this. I don't have a personal bias. I think the lad looks like he's probably a very good footballer, but he's probably going to prove it somewhere else.
I'm just sort of running through this. So Leicester spent 40 million on Tielemans in July 2019. That's their record transfer fee.
Looking a bit of a bargain now, isn't it?
It is indeed. I'm trying to sort of see other clubs. Joel Linton, Newcastle, 40 million, not looking like a bit of a bargain. No. It's fair to say. Southampton, 20 million on Ings. And Ndombele is to be fair, 50 million from Lyon for Tottenham. you sort of can go on. Haller didn't go very well for West Ham, 45 million. My point is, Ian, I think that is in the Premier League sense. I understand the German thing, but German clubs have even less money to spend, I think, in general. You are probably looking at Leipzig, Dortmund, who could afford it. Maybe Gladbach.
You could imagine, I mean, it's not something that generally happens, but going back to Leipzig, we did get him from Leipzig, didn't we? Yeah, going back to Leipzig, he'd be a returning hero. He would still be one of the greatest players that they've ever had. And 30 million for him, that could be a decent investment for him. Could be the rest of his career there.
Okay, we are going to talk about the other areas of the pitch, defence, attack and goalkeeper. That is to come in a minute or two. But before then, John Gibbons spoke to Neil from the Mumbai Supporters Club about a little thing that we're doing next weekend, which involves walking very far to raise money for them.
And it is a little insert. It is John Gibbons from the Anfield Wrap. I'm delighted to be joined by Neil, official supporters club in Mumbai. Neil, welcome back to the Anfield Wrap.
Thank you, John. Hope you're well.
Yeah, nice to see you. As I alluded to there, you've been on a few times with us over the last couple of years, but we're here to talk to you, not so much about the Reds this time, but about what your supporters club is doing and the fundraiser you're doing at the moment. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing at the moment with the community kitchen project and why you guys have decided to lend your support to them?
Perfect. So as just giving a little background, Mumbai in India was hit with like the worst COVID in the last couple of months, and things were very, very bad, worse than like 2 or 3 times worse than what it was last year. So and we've been doing a few activities like helping out with basically helping out the poor people and stuff with food, which is the basic necessity. But this time what we did was we started out with Twitter was the main source of helping people out, firstly because the people were running out of hospital beds, there was no oxygen and just even the basic things. So we started out with that, like helping the needs of the people and retweeting and sharing it with people. So, we can help each other out. And now that the cases have gone down and it's a little bit under control, what we plan to do was to help those who were those who were living below the poverty line and those who are really in needs, because, we living at home, we have all the facilities, we're living in our high castles and, just things are going okay. Of course, it's affected us, but those people who are really affected are those who are poor people, especially the migrant workers. So a lot of migrant people from other states come to Bombay to find jobs, which are daily jobs, and they live hand to mouth. They get their daily wages, and since the lockdown has started, they lose their job. They don't have any job. There's no source of income at all. So what we plan to do was partner up with Khana Chahiye. Khana Chahiye means we want food. That's what it literally translates to. And they've been doing a brilliant job since the last lockdown. Last year we did a few things on our own, but I thought this would like help targeting people who are really in need, because they know what the things are. So they've been doing a brilliant job since last lockdown. They've provided 6 million meals and like 35,000 grocery kits, and helped about, let's say, 600,000 people in like overall, especially those people who are like the migrant workers and those who really, really need those things. So they've been doing a brilliant job. And also one more thing which they have like is the hunger map, which is a really interesting thing, where you can report hunger like in your city. Like if you're in Mumbai, then anyone like you or me could report hunger, or you just report like there are people in need, and they will probably go and help them out with food and basic items. And then they have another parallel, which is the community kitchen, which we are supporting. So the idea behind the community kitchen is to provide daily meals to those people in need, and it's a long-term plan where they can be more sustainable in the future without our help as well. And it's run by an all women's group, so it kind of helps create employment in the slum areas, and those areas which like really have those people who don't really have jobs, especially the women, so they can cook and provide meals. So all the funding which is going to go is basically to help with the groceries and the utensils and the vessels and the packaging and things like that. And in the long run, so right now the meals are provided for free, but in the long run, the plan is to make them self-sustainable and charge a very small fee, so they can like self-sustain. But yeah, this will help them give the good foundation to the community kitchen. There are already 2 existing in like 2 areas. The plan is to start another one as well. So there'll be 3 community kitchens running throughout the city.
So, I mean, it's a fantastic initiative, and what these women are doing, how they come together to do this. And it reminds me a lot of the food banks, obviously, that we have, here, and we're big supporters of Fan Supported Food Banks and what they've done. And so this felt like a natural progression for us to sort of get behind you guys. And, I find your supporters group really inspirational as well, Neil, because you've bonded together through your love of Liverpool, but you've looked to do much more than cheer on the Reds. And I know you do that very passionately, but you've looked to do much more than that. And this is, I guess, a natural thing for you guys, isn't it? Because almost ever since you set up, or certainly for the last few years, you've looked for ways to collectively make a difference, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the support from the fans we get here has been incredible. But the fact that, every one of us has been affected, really. So it's been a little difficult for everyone. Like, we've had people have had salary cuts, people have lost jobs, they've affected their businesses, but then they've still come out and really helped us with, at least donating or sharing things, or at least coming on ground and volunteering if they can't donate or share. So it's been brilliant. We've done a few blood donation drives in the past. We've raised awareness for platelet donations because, everyone does blood donation, but platelet donation is as important. So we've raised awareness for that as well. And yeah, we just helping anyone in need as such, like if someone has a medical emergency or need funds, so we come together and help them out, or just things like that. And since the pandemic, it's really inspired us to do things. And what one of the big things which has been inspiring for us is every match day I've been to Anfield, and I see the people collecting items for the food banks, the local food banks, and that's been really inspirational. I think just seeing that on Twitter and people coming out and helping out, that has really inspired us, because I think there are a lot of ways you can help, but I think food is the most essential thing. If someone goes hungry at night, it's like really the saddest thing. So I think that's what we wanted to focus on, and just help those in need in any way we could.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And we wanted to help you, so we made a donation to the page that you've got off, and there'll be a link to that in the blurb. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, there'll be a link to the fundraiser on the blurb. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, then there'll be a link in the blurb on there. It's across all our social media as well. Or if you're not sure, just tweet me or message me, and I'll point you in the right direction. We'll try and get an email about it next week. We're going to be bells and whistles on this. It's on the Give India page, but we, as I say, we gave the guys some money, and we were sending over a signed shirt for you guys to auction. But we wanted to do a little bit more because Neil's been a good friend of the Anfield Wrap, and as I say, what they're doing is very inspirational. So we've decided to walk 5 football grounds all in one day. So we're starting at Southport, Hague Avenue, sunny Southport, and then we're going down to Marine in a beautiful Crosby, and then to Bootle FC, to Goodison Park because we couldn't resist, and we'll go to that famous away end where we've watched Liverpool win there so many times, and then we'll bounce over to Liverpool and the Shankly Gates and take a nice little picture, and then we're going to get drunk. It's 23.4 miles in total, and yeah, we're going to be walking that on Saturday the 19th. There's no trepidation within the Anfield Wrap offices. I wouldn't call us an athletic bunch, I'll be honest with you, Neil, but we want to do it, and we announced it yesterday, and what's really nice is that lots of people have donated and things already, so I'm really pleased that we've managed to give you guys a boost already, mate.
Indeed, I would like to thank especially you and everyone at the Anfield Wrap for what they've done. It's given us a massive boost, and like I'm out of words on how to thank you. And the emails I've thanked you a million times, and everyone from our committee as well is like in awe of what you guys are doing, especially with the walk. It wasn't expected, and we're just like out of words. I mean, we couldn't thank you enough for what you've been doing for us and you're planning to do for us. So thank you very much for your support, John, and everyone at the Anfield Wrap. We are truly very grateful, and I hope that whatever we are collectively doing, the Anfield Wrap and the LFC Mumbai, I hope it makes a small difference to those people in need, and we plan to continue to do it every year if we can. Yeah. So thank you, John, for everything.
No problem at all. We're looking forward to it. Well, most of us are looking forward to it. There's a bit of trepidation, as I say, but we're going to have a fun day and we're going to enjoy it, but hopefully raise lots of money for you guys as well. It's a fantastic initiative. As I say, we'll try and send out an email on it with a bit more, but if you just go to the Mumbai Supporters Club on social media, there's a website as well, www.lfcmumbai.com, if you want to check out more of what they do. You can connect with them on Twitter, which is at LFC Mumbai, or have a look at our pages as well. As I say, we're going to have loads of stuff on there. But the community kitchen project that the guys are supporting sounds absolutely incredible, and we're really happy to support them. And hopefully, we'll raise a lot of money with you guys. But also, it's a sign that we're with you, mate. Because as I say, we're friends now, Neil. You're a friend of the show, and the anthem "You'll Never Walk Alone" did sort of spin my head when I was planning out or every 0.4 mile of the 23.4 miles, and hopefully sort of on the day that we won't just raise lots of money for you, but it'll show that Liverpool fans around the world are thinking of you guys, because listen, COVID's hit everywhere and COVID's affected everyone, and we all know people unfortunately who've not made it through there. But the scenes that we've seen on our news in India in particular, and obviously Mumbai, are are extreme and are very, very sad, and we want to sort of stand with you in support for what you're going through as well. So money and love coming both your way, hopefully, Neil, and fingers crossed with it, and keep going. And yeah, let's all raise lots of money for this foundation. But as I say, it's just the start of what we can do together.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for everything.
Cheers. Thanks to Neil. Do donate. Do help us get over the line. It'll be much easier to do if there's lots of money in the coppers. And thanks to speak to Neil. And yeah, back to the main show.
Great stuff there. Yes, so I will be walking 24 miles from Southport to Anfield via Marine, Bootle and Goodison Park next Saturday. It is for that community kitchen project. Do donate if you can. We will be retweeting and sharing it everywhere on Facebook, on Instagram as well, and all the obvious stuff. And we'll be doing stuff on the day around it. Also, I would like to point out that at the minute on Red and White Cop, they've got a thread that they've placed in order to celebrate the contribution of Phil Scratton towards the quest for justice over many a year around Hillsborough. If you are registered on Rourke, you can obviously add to that thread. Phil himself is reading it. He's responded very, very early and has ever been remarkably modest. Gareth, you've spoken to Phil on a number of occasions in the past, and you can't understate how important he's been.
Yeah, he's a fantastic man, and he's dedicated a lot of his life and a lot of his mental energy to a cause we all feel passionately about. And he's a lovely fella, and when you're in his presence, you can't help but feel, I don't know, sort of lifted by him, that he's on your side. And yeah, he speaks so well. He's so intelligent. He was obviously central to the Hillsborough Independent panel. And remains central now. And I know that he does a lot of stuff so there's the stuff that we know about, there's loads of stuff that we don't know about, there's loads of stuff that he does behind the scenes. He's constantly talking with survivors, he's constantly having ideas about what we can do with Hillsborough legacy-wise to tell the story going into the future. Yeah, he's a fantastic man, and he deserves every credit.
So that thread, go on.
Sorry, can I just say on that, the reaction show he did with Gibbo is one of the greatest shows I've ever heard. It's absolutely brilliant. Gibbo speaks for probably about 30 seconds and
yeah.
And that's not the reason. But Phil is he's so eloquent and so calm, so measured about his approach to everything. It's all detail, it's all fact. It's just genius.
check that out, but do also check out On Red and White Cop. It's a thread called Phil Scratton, a truly remarkable and extraordinary Liverpoolian. It is there. At the very least, read it. Do feel as though you can register and contribute to it as well. As I say, Phil knows it exists. He is on top of it. He replies very, very early, and as I say, very, very modestly indeed. But do have a little look at that if you get the opportunity to do so. We will return back through our squad. And on the forwards, Emilia, the first thing I'd point out is it's worth saying that Divok's setting up projects at the university.
I saw it. Remarkable. We get I'm on a lot of mailing lists in work for things from different organisations across Merseyside. So if there's like a lemur born at Chester Zoo, I'll hear about it. But I'll also hear about any special funds set up at the university or scholarships. And honestly, that was the most delightful surprise landed in my inbox last week. What a lovely man.
I mean, he is a lovely man, and he's very eager in amongst all the press releases to talk about what Liverpool has given him and what Liverpool has done for him. The one thing I do begin to wonder there, because I don't want to be Rob Gutman and filter all pieces of information in my life through transfers, but setting up programs at the university doesn't suggest to me he thinks he's going anywhere.
Or that he thinks he is and he's going, this will be a nice thing to remember me by,
Maybe, yes.
Like he's making a memory box.
That on me, they're very clever.
Yeah, no, I don't. Let's just keep him forever. For the sake of, I'm sure there would be some people that would like to buy him, but I'd also like to see him for a few moments of madness every single season. I like what he brings to my life. I like what he brings to the pitch, and I just like having him there.
The Divock problem is that last season, Ian, there were no moments of madness.
No,
and that is not a single one. And there weren't a ton of moments of madness.
There was a moment that would have been madness be put against the bar.
Yes, yeah. And there was also moments of madness. Not a ton, although there were a few more than is given credit for. Moments of madness in the 1920 season. Yeah. Now, Divock's absolutely mad moment to goals ratio is spectacular.
Yeah.
It's fair to say, and they will never be beaten. There are 5 Divock Origi strikes that could be amongst the greatest goals any Liverpool players ever scored for a variety of reasons. They're in there, they exist, they're done.
Yeah.
Surely he does actually just need to move on to play some football though, and go and offer a continual presence of centre forward craft somewhere else.
Yeah, well, first things first, I now really want emails about lemurs. I want emails.
Hook you up, Ian, don't worry. Forward those over to you.
No, this feels like a legacy. As soon as I saw the announcement that he was doing this scholarship at the university, it just felt like a legacy. It felt like a goodbye. It felt like I'm giving something back to the city because I've had a good time here. He does need to go and play football somewhere. He's not playing football for us. I don't know how injured he was for the last few games of the season, but he was clearly never going to be called upon because the moments that you needed from him weren't suddenly going to appear. And he's given us some of the greatest moments we'll ever have. And that's as much as you can ask for from a player. I saw a conversation on Twitter the other day, people saying he was a bit thick. He wasn't trusted because he's a bit thick. It's like, the lad speaks 6 languages.
He plays the piano.
He plays piano. He studies philosophy. Yeah. He's not thick. He's a really, really intelligent footballer.
Yeah.
And it's not happening for him the last couple of seasons. And remember, you sat there on a lovely hot night in Madrid watching him play football. He was terrible for 20 minutes and then he put the ball in the back of the net. And I'll love him forever for putting the ball in the back of the net. But I'll caveat with the fact that he was terrible for 20 minutes there.
It was a spectacularly bad performance, then it was remarkable.
Yeah.
Can I just say that we had this exact conversation about him at the end of 1920, and we said, if you were him, would you not want to go out on a high and go and play some football somewhere? Because we don't know how many minutes he's going to get in the next season. And we were proven right. But I think maybe there's a part of me that believed that he just wants to stick around. He doesn't care. He'd rather be a legend here, or kind of not a legend, but like everyone's favourite fella here, than go and play some football elsewhere. But it never really compares to what he feels here.
Maybe he's happy.
Yeah.
I think that's all very possible, Gareth, but there is a point where there is the playing of the football. And the other thing that happens last summer is the global pandemic, and it's difficult to imagine the money being made available for him. I think there's a few clubs right now. I can think of a couple of really good examples. For instance, I think that West Ham United could do a hell of a lot worse than put 15 to 20 million in front of Liverpool, just seeing the impact Lingard had, who was similarly written off at Manchester United. It's a Rory Smith point, but I think at times it is forgotten the quality of the squad members of the top 4/top 6 versus the rest of the league. I think there's value for in him for someone in this country, or if not here, abroad.
Yeah, absolutely. And he will be better than what we have seen in flashes when he's getting regular football. You would think I mean, I always go back to when Klopp's first kicking around at Liverpool. There's a point where he's dropped Sturridge, doesn't he? And he's playing Origi. He liked Origi. He moulded Origi and used Origi a lot. But yeah, last season 6 starts, 1 goal. I mean, that's not suiting anyone, is it?
No.
I think though, with a lot of the squad and with a lot of the things we're going to debate, is it just depends what comes around the corner. Really, I don't think it's. It's easy for us to say, okay, surely you move on, but the offer has to be right for Divock.
Yeah.
It has to be a club that he's interested in and a place that he's interested in.
He's going to want European football. That's why I say West Ham. West Ham are, they're playing European football this season. There's an opportunity there to be part of something that's going.
He's not even in the Belgium squad now either, is he? So it's clearly affecting his career now at this point. And as much as he might like Liverpool, I'm sure he does want his career to go somewhere. He's another one. He's 25 years old. It feels like he's been here forever, but he's still got plenty of his career to do something with. And I think he would go with everyone's best wishes. But it sort of reminds me a little bit of like Lucas. Like Lucas stayed for what felt like ages, I think the manager had almost said, well, if the offer comes that suits him and us, we're not going to stand in his way. But equally, if he's here, we'll probably use him from time to time. And feels a little bit like that with Divock. But, clearly, as we've already seen, the opportunity is going to be really, really limited. We've got the front three. We've got Jota as well as the front three. There's still people, including me, that think we should go and get another attacking player as well. Certainly, if that materialises, then, the opportunities are going to be even less.
Are you Minaminoing?
No, in terms of wanting to keep him, you mean?
Yeah.
No, not really. I kind of think we got him on the cheap, didn't we? We activated a clause and all that kind of stuff. I think the way he was ushered out on loan suggested to me that he didn't think it was working. Do you know what I mean? You could have kept him around this season, but they've seen something, I think, where they think we're not sure. And I think again it's one of them though where it's like who is prepared to buy him and who is prepared to pay the money Liverpool want. I imagine Liverpool will now want to make a profit on him. So it may well be Southampton. He's done all right there. But yeah, I just sort of can't see him coming back and playing any significant part in what we're doing.
Are you Minaminoing?
I'd sell him. I'd say that in terms of you saying who would take him, not who would take him, but kind of like who's seen anything that makes them want him. He did show bits of promise when he's played for us, and then he's just not played for us at all. So if they're looking at his time at Liverpool, there's bits they see that they might like. But yeah, I would just get rid of him. And I feel sad saying that because I was very hopeful when he joined us and I thought he was going to be something special, but it just never really saw anything at all.
Was it the Palace game where he looked absolutely immense? He actually started off running the game for us. And
he scores early, doesn't he?
He scores early and he looks like he's really going to kick on from that point, and then he doesn't. Yeah. I personally, I said before the show, I'd keep him because we've not paid a great deal on him. $7.5 million, it's nothing basically in terms of what we've spent on the squad. There was a whisper a couple of weeks ago that Klopp thought there was still a place for him next season. I'd give him a shot to see what happens. I do agree with Gareth that, the fact that they've ushered him out on loan at a point when we had players dropping all over the place might well indicate that they don't think he's going to do anything. But I'd be prepared to take another look at him and see whether he can fit in somewhere.
Okay. The other lads, there's still a little bit of noise that it's possible that the African Cup of Nations could be moved, Gareth. I think in general, what does need to happen, perhaps not around Mo Salah, but certainly around Mane, and I would argue Firmino, is I think both of them need just a little bit more looking after now. So you said before that you wouldn't be averse to one other. I think for their own good, they need a little bit more looking after. I think Mane has began to sort of show, I think, some wear and tear. I think it was a big toll on him over the course of the season. He played so much football. I think Firmino's moving to a certain age. It looks like Mo Salah remains made of granite or whatever else you want to sort of say. But the other two, I think they do need a bit of looking after. And Jota, at least his injuries tended to only be contact ones last season.
Yeah, he doesn't look like a player that there's a particular problem with. He was just a little bit unfortunate, wasn't he, Jota? But yeah, they're all 28, aren't they? But I think it's fair to say they look like they're at different places. Like Mo's just in unbelievable shape, and I know has been right through his Liverpool career. I think Mane mentally as well has looked a bit burnt out at times, and perhaps could do with a break in terms of that. Equally, Firmino, I still wonder with Firmino. I mean, I love him, so like I think I'm a little bit blinded by that. But it really makes me sad to think like performances might now be dropping off, and we might sort of start be thinking about, well, one day he's not going to be at the Reds, because I just love his smile, I love his style, I love what he does, and I kind of think in my head, a big crowd back in at Anfield is going to fix everything with him, which might be a bit rose-tinted spectacle. So, yeah, I think you're right in that. Those two look like they've played an awful lot of football. They have played an awful lot of football, and they perhaps could be used a little bit more sparingly, and it would probably benefit Liverpool.
They don't get to float through games. None of Liverpool's front three do. I think that has been a thing in the past that you could do if you played up front. You can pick your moment, you can manage yourself a little bit, and some managers encourage it. Our lads don't get that, Emilia, and I think that's what sort of concerns me, is that it's high intensity, and there was a period of time there, arguably from approximately the January of 2018 through until the game against Crystal Palace in 2020, where they were having to play with an unbelievable level of intensity to win everything that they won, and there was no hiding places for anyone. There was no peaks and troughs. You needed to get 100 points, and you needed to win a European Cup. Yeah,
I'd say that's no more true for any of them than it is for Sadio Mane, in that it's relentless. It's absolutely relentless, and 99% of the time he is relentless and is able to kind of match that, and you almost don't realise, he makes it look effortless at times. There's a lot of times where you realise just how much effort is involved.
Yeah.
And I think you say, obviously, they all play a lot of games, but Sadio Mane, I mean, I don't know what the stats are, I'm sorry, but I imagine he plays more 90 minutes than a lot of them, because he just never seems to get a break ever. And also, again, I don't know the stats for it, but I feel like Sadio has more decisions go against him than most other players that you watch play football, and that has to take a toll as well. Obviously, playing all the games takes a toll, but kind of being repeatedly fouled or having decisions go against you,
and then not winning the match.
Yeah, and then having to keep doing that over and over again when you know that you are playing relentlessly and the pressure is relentless, that's got to take a toll. And I think a lot of things feel very unfair on Sadio Mane, and that's difficult if you're not getting a rest.
This is, in general, Ian, this is what concerns me around a sort of a general issue of wear and tear. And I think you see it nowhere else. Salah's about to turn 29. I think he turns 29 this week. Firmino, Mane now are 29. They've done a lot. You can sound like really basic, or they're all just doing what all other footballers do, but they happen to be a little bit better. But there's some footballers get to have 6 games towards the end of the season where there's not much to play for. Liverpool's front three just have not had that. There's some players who, get rested here and there or for an elongated period. Broadly speaking, Liverpool's front three don't get that. Even injuries, really weirdly, because none of them have been particularly injury prone whilst they've been at Liverpool, what that means is they haven't had those bits of rest either.
Yeah.
It's a really strange sort of thing to you end up using that as a stick to beat someone with. But for instance, this season, I've got it in front of me. Mo Salah plays 3,300 minutes in the Premier League. Sadio Mane plays 3,034 minutes in the Premier League. Roberto Firmino plays 3,019 minutes in the Premier League. And I bet you they played as many, if not more, than that in the previous 3 seasons.
Yeah, and as you just said about the injuries, if you get an injury, some of the time you're coming back is recovery time, which you're not getting, especially in this last season where it's been so condensed. It feels like the longest season ever, but it's the shortest season ever, with the shortest break ever. And they've played every 3 days. And it's going to take it out of you. And at the same time, you've got, as I've said a few times, Mane gave the interview where he said people don't realise what it's like to go home if you haven't got family or you haven't got a wife there, and you are alone in the middle of this pandemic. So that's obviously been inside the lad's head. It's, I think, and with Gareth to an extent, the presence of a crowd next season, we saw what the presence of a crowd did for Mane in the last game of the season. So the presence of a proper crowd, if we finally get it back, is going to make a hell of a difference to these lads. But if we hadn't got Jota injured against Midtjylland, he would have been an option through the season to give him a rest. And I do think another striker would be a very useful thing to sign at the moment. I'd love FSG's apology for the whole Super League fiasco to be getting their hands in their pockets and buying a Sancho. I think that'd be really nice. But at the same time, I'd like to see Harvey Elliott play more often next season, because I want to see that lad actually in a red shirt. We've seen what he can do a division lower. Let's see what he can do for us now. Let's start actually integrating them into the team, because if you're 18 and you're good enough, it's that old, if you're good enough, you're old enough. He will be good enough.
Do you want to do one more attacker?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
An old-fashioned number 9, basically.
Okay, intrigued. Goalkeepers then, let's be honest. The sub-goalie, Adrian position is interesting in that there's a thing, I think, Emilia, where the unspoken thing. So it's difficult to talk about injuries. One of the reasons being is that we don't have all the sports science information, and a second reason being that if we did, are we qualified to use it? But it's difficult to talk about injuries. It's also difficult, I think, and I think you see it nowhere more than the sub-keeper position, to talk about who's sound and who does everybody like having around the gaff. Yeah. And I think this is a really strange little thing for Adrian. There's talk of Liverpool looking to continue with this contract, and I'm okay with that in the sense that I feel a bit like, and this can sound awful, like it's real workplace stuff. They've got the one they know. Mm-hmm. So even if not everybody thinks he's sound and not everybody thinks he's great, because God knows there was a point this season where Joe Gomez didn't seem to like him very much, but they at least know him. So we all know this lad and we know what he's like and we know what he is to have around the gaff. Is it worth getting to know another one? But the flip side is that Alisson Becker gets injured. Slightly disproportionately more than you expect for a goalkeeper. So whether or not Liverpool like Adrian, they maybe do need to decide whether or not they need a better one. Is that fair?
I don't know. So, right, I don't want to put it out into the universe that I would feel completely confident if Alisson Becker got injured, and I'd love watching Adrian for another few, because then it'll happen and I'll have put a hex on him. But genuinely, I feel completely confident with Adrian when Alisson isn't there. And that might be unfounded, but I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he plays a lot of games this season that we win the league and plays a really important role in us doing so. And when you talk about soundness and that being important, I reckon he's a really nice lad. Like when you watch him celebrating at the Super Cup, which was like, it was one of his first appearances for us, wasn't it? He just looks really happy to be there. And I think there's been a lot of...
Fell down the steps when Alisson scored.
I think he's a nice lad. I think that he'll be nice to have around, and I genuinely have total confidence in him. Like, his first appearance for us is having to come on in the first game of the season because Alisson gets injured. Could you be thrown into the deep end any more than that with that much expectation? And he does brilliantly. And I know last season he doesn't do quite as brilliantly. Well, but I think that comes out. You say that, we can't talk about the sports science side of it because we don't know. We also don't know someone's kind of mental state. But of all the seasons to have the pressure put on you, last one was not the one.
Kelleher ends up getting in and he becomes number 2.
Yeah.
But there's rumours of him going out on loan. You can make a bit of an argument. He could go and do with doing, no matter what he's going to do. Like, if he is going to be Liverpool's sub-keeper for 10 years, he could probably do with having a year of 30 appearances, if you sort of know what I mean, Ian.
Definitely.
So that's been knocked around. I'm not sure where I stand on it. I'm not saying I'm in favour of that there, by the way. I'm just sort of saying I can see the argument for it. That's why, if you are going to do that, if you are going to send Kelleher out on loan, you end up in a situation where the Adrian question as to whether or not he's the lad who comes in for the first 10 games and wows everyone and woos Emilia.
Or the lad who throws the ball to wow Felix.
Or exactly. I
did not say he was perfect.
Is the key, no, I'm not saying that you did, don't worry. Is the key question, and it's one that Liverpool do sort of have to wrestle with, but I just get the impression the manager can't be fucking bothered.
Yeah, it's the number 2 goalies it's the weirdest position in football, isn't it? Because you've got to be good enough to do the job, despite the fact you know that you're not going to do the job very often. And Kelleher has shown that he's good enough to do it, but he's a young lad and he probably needs to play some football somewhere. If you're going to be Liverpool's number 2 goalie for a sustained period, and you expect Alisson to be the number 1 for a sustained period, then you're probably not going to play football for the majority of your career. Steve Grizovic went on to have a fantastic career after being at Liverpool. At Liverpool, he made 1 appearance in something like 6 years. And that's not what you get into football for. Every other sub has got a chance of getting on the pitch. If you're the sub goalie, your only chance is if the other leg gets injured, and you really don't want that. So that probably means you're playing the next 10 games. And Adrian did come in and play 10 games magnificently. He made crucial saves in every single game, but he threw the ball to João Felix. And I'm fine. This is like, I love John Arnorisa, but if he'd used his right foot to clear the ball against Chelsea, we'd have had another European Cup final. It's that simple sometimes. I think Adrian, it's one of those, this is the lad you know, and he clearly is a nice bloke. And if you send out Kelleher on loan for a season, Adrian for another season, wouldn't be a disastrous thing, as long as he doesn't play any matches. It's sort of where you end up. Yeah, basically, yeah. Was that where you end up? Where do you end up?
Yeah, I mean, I get all the likeable fella thing, and I think that's absolutely spot on. He obviously is. I think he'd be a great pint, but I just don't want to see him in between the sticks for Liverpool, to be
like
honest.
Andy Heaton.
I think some of it comes down to perception as well when you talk about that terrible mistake. Like, there's a lot of Alisson mistakes that you watch and go, oh my God, what are you doing? But it's because he's the first choice. You don't feel that sense of everything is lost that when the second choice keeper does it. I think it was more because
it ended up in the back of the net and we went out to the European Cup. I think
that was did go out to the European Cup.
I think his PR team.
I feel like Adrian's like sort of known football wide for being a bit mad and having a massive rick in him, and I think there was a lot of eyebrows raised that Liverpool went for him in the first place, and then he did come in and do all right. I think we have got to say that, and he does play a part in us winning a trophy and all of those things. Last season there's only 11 games there where it's not Alisson in goal, and it's 6 for Adrian and 5 for Kelleher. I wouldn't be if you're keeping Adrian, I'm not letting Kelleher go on loan. I'm saying you've got to stick around. I think you're probably right, Neil, on the just can't be arsed thing. It's like, how many things can you fix in one summer? The keeper, if we can just keep both of those keepers, that's all right. And how good is a number 2 ever going to be, really? I thought it was interesting. I know we're not doing the Euros, but you broke it a little bit. Can I just break it for a second and say, Ward for Wales obviously makes a load of decent saves when you're watching that game.
A couple of excellent ones.
And you're like, what's he up to now? Oh yeah, he's just not getting a game at Leicester. That's what he's up to now. So it is a weird craft to be that keeper that never plays almost. And it's sort of, how good is that keeper ever? Do you know what I mean? I know we obviously Liverpool do the mad one where we had the glove triangle that time. But, in general, we sort of had a fair few crap number 2s.
I think our best ever one could be Cavalieri.
Yeah. I mean, I
can't remember a Cavalieri era.
When Ian was talking,
I don't even remember him being there.
You were going on about a Grizovic. I was getting Mike Hooper flashbacks.
Yes.
And they weren't good ones.
No, but he was very big and very ginger.
Yeah. Massive hair.
Yeah, huge hair. Huge
Apparently massively into bird watching.
Really? Twitcher?
Yeah. I spoke to a girl once who had been out with him, and he apparently stopped the car on a date to because he'd spotted something, like
a finch.
Yeah.
Pull over there, love.
Just hang on. Just gonna write this one down in the notebook, and then we'll crack on with the date.
I tell you what, you don't get this anywhere else. You do not get this anywhere else. Moving on to the defenders, just very, very quickly. Konate is in. Ultimately, Ian, for me, there's 2 questions. Well, there's 3, but 2. One of them's linked. Shimikas remains a mystery. Nico Williams remains a question. But the biggest question is ultimately, what shape does everybody get back in? If you're talking about Liverpool's defence going into next season, that's the conversation you're having. And I'll say it again, they don't give us the sports science data. And if they did, what would we do with it? Turn it into paper aeroplanes.
I'd be looking at going, these are just pictures. I don't understand any of it. It's pictures and graphs. I haven't got a clue. I still worry that we might be 1 centre-back light.
I agree.
It's because
still being linked with them, by the way.
Oh, I think it's useful, because I think there was talk that
Ben Davies could be a thing, couldn't he?
Ben Davies he literally could have spent 6 months learning how to be a Liverpool player like Robbo did. It's it could genuinely be that simple an answer, and I hope it is. I'd love that to be the massive surprise for next season, but I do worry about the state that they come back in. And Konate or Konate, and I'm not sure which one we're going with anymore. I haven't got a clue. There was rumour that he wouldn't be able to start the season. I can't remember how valid that rumour was, but automatically you're looking at going, I don't know who we're starting with, and we might actually be using Fabinho as a second centre-back already.
No.
Kabak's definitely gone, isn't he? So in that case, you absolutely do need another centre-back.
It would appear that he's gone, but then we did something really weird where we
wishing him good luck.
We wished him luck,
though, hasn't he?
We wished him luck for the Euros. Did he buy?
That's bold, isn't it?
That's a confident young man. It's a temporary contract, this, mate.
We moved out of it, rather, sorry. But as in, surely he's gone. I thought it was pretty...
But then we did this mad thing where we tweeted best of luck to him for the Euros.
Maybe we just being nice.
Well, maybe we felt like a club had to, and the onus was on us.
Yeah.
I'd love to think there was a meeting. Oh, go on.
Like the one where they decided to make the Alisson graphic for look, he might score a goal. There's every chance that he might, but they're going, look, it's going to look bad if we don't,
Absolutely. Yeah. So we think he's gone, but it is strange. Do you think he's gone? I think he is gone, but presumably our option remains in place.
Pretty much said he was gone, didn't they? Because we talked previously on one of the other shows about how we felt it was quite harsh, that it was just like he's packed the stuff up and got off from his house in Formby, see you lad. But then the tweeting thing was a bit mad, and also then that made you then click his profile, or it certainly did with me, and you're like, he's still saying he's a Liverpool player.
Yeah,
maybe it's just because it's the his loan is till the start of July or something like that. It's as simple as that.
Or maybe it's Michael Edwards 4D chess.
Who knows, mate? I mean, we are still. Veering into gutter territory, but this Romero link seems quite strong. I won't go into it because I suspect that is top of the agenda in gutter, but that's interesting because it's almost like, well, what you just said about who's actually going to start the season. Maybe that's what they're saying as well. Because we might make paper airplanes with the sports science data, but we might also look at it and go, well, how fit are Gomez and Van Dijk?
Oh, and Matip,
because it's quite quiet on it, isn't it? It's like, you see them knocking about and Virgil's at games and all that, but we don't know if he can play football, like literally. And the last I seen where anyone sort of hinted at where anyone was on fitness, it just sort of said something like, Gomez is the closest to being fit. And that's all. And it was like,
And last time we saw Gomez's leg, it looked awful.
Yeah.
When Van Dijk did a really long interview for the club website where he was kind of it was where he said he was going to be missing the Euros, but he was talking quite confidently about being back for pre-season, and he was like, that's our plan. That almost made it seem like, well, I'm ready now, but they're trying to keep me back for then. But obviously things can change between then, and the two of them have been training together, so that might be how they're kind of more aware of one of them being ahead of the other.
Dutch definitely could do with them.
Yeah. But I was under the impression he was coming back in pre-season and that Gomez would be ready to as well. And if not, then yes, please, can we buy some more people to play there?
Are we happy with Nico and Tsimikas?
Tsimikas, I'm not sure. So,
why are you happy with Nico?
Well, we'll get onto that later. But with Tsimikas, so he has the 2 injuries, but I didn't realise when I was getting ready for this, he's available for 2/3 of the season. And I genuinely cannot remember seeing him on the pitch. I know he was there, but I really don't remember
seeing him.
Played
10 minutes at the league.
So there's got to be something, like we said earlier in the show, where Klopp's got, with Minamino, where Klopp's gone, I just don't think this is working, sorry, because if he's available for that much of it, and Andy Robertson plays after Alisson the most kind of minutes per squad inclusion of anyone, I think it comes out 83.1 minutes per squad inclusion, second only to the keeper. He needs a rest. Why are you not playing Tsimikas? There's got to be something there.
Don't we bring Milner on to play left back at one point while Tsimikas is on the bench?
Yeah, that's the madness of it.
See, I thoroughly castigated people a couple of seasons ago for saying, taking one look at Fabinho on his first game and saying he's too slow for the Premiership. But bear in mind, I was never any good at football at any point in my life. I looked at Tsimikas for those 10 minutes and went, I'm not sure this lad's a footballer, I think we bought really badly here.
Remember when
I could be wrong, and he's got great hair. So
when we did the YouTube thing for him, though,
he looked fantastic.
He looked all right, and he's whipping balls in, and he looked half decent. You could sort of see
him playing
Robbo-esque type stuff in there a little bit, but then, yeah, he just hasn't seemingly settled. And obviously, as you're all saying, I don't think the manager's shown any faith in him so far. Like the story of, so both him and Ben Davis, the story of, it's like Robbo where they needed that adjustment side.
I was going to grasp at that straw as well.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it is a little bit of a worry. I think Nico's still young, isn't he? So, could well blossom into something half decent. I think Trent's one of I know he's currently injured, but in general terms, fingers crossed, touch wood, all the rest of it, he seems to be available more often than not. So I think you've got to sort of bear that in mind and say, okay, well, how many times are we likely to be turning to Nico?
But Trent might not start the season.
I know.
Yeah.
But then if it was Nico, I don't think that's the end of the world.
No, he showed 2 years ago what he could do. That first season he came through, he showed promise, and he showed promise as an old-fashioned attacking fullback, not a Trent-style attacking fullback, but fullback who could get up the pitch and cut in. And he did show that promise. So I think he's worth persevering with.
I think all he's shown is promise is the only thing. So you've got a season where Nat Phillips has an absolute breakthrough and other players have a breakthrough because the opportunity is there to have one. And the opportunity was there for him to have a breakthrough, and he's continued to show promise, would be my only concern. And maybe if we send him somewhere else, he can have that breakthrough and by all means come back. But I just don't think he has that breakthrough with us this season.
In general, if we say our ambitions are to compete for the title until the last week of the season, I think that's fair. And we say that our ambitions
should be to win it.
I know, but my point being is that to still be in the title picture. I mean, if we've won it with 6 games to go, fucking great.
Be more than that.
But to be in and around the title last weekend of the season, and to acknowledge that means getting the other side of 90 points, probably the other side of 95 points. If we say that our other ambition is to simultaneously make the last 4 of the Champions League, to do both of those things at once, are we all of the view around this table that the biggest concern is fitness and availability of the footballers, Gareth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously some of them are playing in the competition that we're not mentioning. So there's that issue. Some of them are, coming back from
a big rule. I just thought people got enough Euros in their lives.
They didn't hear what you said before we started recording. I wouldn't want to repeat it.
Yeah. Awful news for the Queen.
There's the long term injuries that so affected us last season. How do they recover from that for next season? I think is a huge concern. We've seen it before with players that when they come back, they don't look as good, or it takes them a while to get up to speed, or they get injured again, and things like that. So all of those things have got to be worries. And there's only so many things as well that you can sort of prepare for. Like, so, I think we all said, okay, we were a centre back shy to what we should have been when we were in this crisis and all the rest of it, and maybe Liverpool sat on their hands a little bit in that January market and things like that. But equally, you can't go on forever. Do you know what I mean? You can't say, oh, well, 6 centre-halves are going to get...
9 midfielders Ian was annoyed about. That's 15 players. You know what I mean?
So that was 9 that we had.
Exactly.
You need a little bit. You need a little bit of fortune around that, don't you? And I think if we get that and our best players are fit more often than not, then guess what? Surprise, surprise, we will be up there. But, we don't know. It's dead unknown as to where everyone's going to be around all that.
That's the unknowns. Gareth Roberts with Ian Salmon and with Emilia Bona. We are walking 24 miles. Do support us in that if you can. I wasn't in the meeting. That's all I'll say. 24 miles. Thank you very much indeed for listening to the show. Thank you very much indeed for those who were on it. We shall be back with more Anfield Wrap stuff next week. There's everything you need to subscribe as well. The AnfieldWrap.com/subscribe for that. All the obvious stuff. Loads and loads of transfers. Loads of looking ahead to next season. Loads of silly games. Bits of the Euros if we must. See you later.